Welcome back to Lead Empowered TV. I am your host, Nathan Mitchell. Why does selling today, especially online, feel more complicated than ever? Buyers are often overwhelmed with options, inboxes are crowded, and trust is harder to earn than ever. With that in mind, is one of the most powerful tools in sales being written off perhaps a little bit far too quickly? My guest today is Beth Master. Beth is a recognized expert in helping sales teams unlock revenue and opportunity through strategic email communication and language that actually engages prospects. With more than 30 years of experience, she has helped organizations from high growth startups to Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft, Disney, NASDAQ, Adobe, and IBM. She's helped them cut through the noise and win more meetings. Beth teaches sales teams how to use email not to sell, but to spark curiosity and earn that first conversation. Her proven 3-sentence email structure, compelling subject lines, and focus on capturing mindshare consistently lead to stronger pipelines and real-world results. Beyond her work with global brands, Beth is also a trusted advisor and a generous volunteer with organizations like Children's Hospitals, reflecting her commitment to both excellence and impact. Beth, welcome to Lead Empowered TV. It's so great to have you here, my friend. How are you doing?
It is great to be here, even if it's a cold, cold day, right? We're in warm offices.
Yeah, crazy weather here in, I don't know what's going to be like where you're at, but here in Oklahoma, we're supposed to have like 70 degree weather next week or something like that. So
I had just been in Chicago where it was like their fourth coldest day on record. And now back in Omaha, and on Christmas Day, it's supposed to be 65 degrees. I'm like, I will take it. Merry Christmas.
How was your trip to Chicago? And I know you had an opportunity to visit your son.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I can spend time with him, the house is so quiet with him not being here anymore. And so like I went on spent a whole week with him. And of course he's like a coffee aficionado. So we were trying coffee shop after coffee shop after coffee shop. It was great. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, Beth, so good to have you here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation about email and how we can use it more effectively and strategically, especially from the standpoint of selling. And Beth, selling today feels perhaps overly complicated. Tech stacks are bigger, attention spans have become shorter than ever, and trust really feels harder to earn. From your professional perspective, why is selling, especially in an online world, become so messy today?
Well, I think part of it is, and you said a little bit of it in the intro, like people want to write things off, like email doesn't work, calling doesn't work, voicemail doesn't work. And I'm going to say that's not necessarily true. And I'm going to say this problem kind of stems from upstream, meaning when people get onboarded, I mean, the onboarding people have so much on their plate. If you think about it, policies, procedures, tools, networks, here's what we do, right? And when sales goes out into the world, they're pitching, right? Here's what we do. We're really proud of what we do. And so we're like trying to convince someone that we can help them. But as I always say, it's like the buyer or the seller is here, the buyer is here, and this is Death Valley, right? So what we do 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 30 years ago no longer works. So you have to get into a real conversation, organic, authentic, where you make a relationship deposit. And I think that's where people go wrong, because when I see emails, they're all pitching. It's here's what we do and why we can help and why we're better than our competitor.
Yeah, so really, it sounds like people are maybe missing the mark and not focusing on building the relationship first. I follow you quite a bit on LinkedIn, and I want to hear, you call yourself a former inbox invader. So I would like for you to shed a little bit of light on that for us here today. And also, one of the things that kind of hit me, so to speak, is, you made a comment one day about people commonly starting emails with, first of all, I hope you're doing well, right?
Right.
And I do that all the time.
Yeah.
So a couple of quick things before we move on. One, what's the story behind Inbox Invader, and what's a better approach, than what I've been accustomed to doing, which is saying, first of all, I hope you're doing well.
Yeah. So,
which sounds so cliche at the end of the day, doesn't it?
It does. And listen, it worked. At one point in time, that really worked well. Now I call it wasted real estate. So that is more about us as buyer or sellers trying to say to the buyer, hey, I'm going to be real sweet. You're really going to like me because I'm going to be this nice person. So when we say, hope you're doing well, the buyer's like, you don't really care. Right. And so that's their first thing. And so they're deleting the email because what's coming after that? I'm going to try and sell you, right? So they already know what you're up to. My story of Inbox Invader, I say this to people all the time. I have failed a lot. And I think like good people really do fail a lot. It's hard to acknowledge that you failed. And when I was in those moments of failure, they were hard, right? But I would, because it would work back in the day, I would like list out my features and benefits, and I would tell people how I could help them. And, back in the day you could do that. But now the challenge is like, I ask when I do live trainings, I'm always like, when's the last time you were to a mall? And, people are like, never. I'm like, when's the last time Amazon was at your house? Everybody raises their hand because we have switched. Sales struggles to make that same switch where they just need to be able to, I say, a relationship deposit. So a better approach is to say, I know something and I'm going to share that with you. Like, for example, I might in an email say, there are 3 questions that organizations fail to ask because they're not obvious, and they're not asking them because they're not obvious, but they have a profound impact on the outcome that they really need. Like, I just told them I know something and I want to share that with them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And talking about Amazon, said how often is Amazon at your house? Well, for most of us, it's multiple times a week, right? And really, it's put us in a situation where we're more transactional and less relational than ever. Mm-hmm. To your point, I can't really remember the last time that I was at our local mall here in the Tulsa area. I just don't go there at all. And now, I mean, back in the day, if you're a lady, maybe you went to a specific boutique at the mall and you had a salesperson that you interacted with all the time, and, he or she knew what you liked and would point you in the right direction. And now it's just so easy to go online, find what you're looking for, have it shipped to your door. If it doesn't work out, you can send it back, right? But I think we've missed the relationship piece in a lot of that.
100%. And I use this example. So this helps people kind of clarify, like, whoa, I really do need to make a change. If I'm sales rep A and I come in and let's say that I sell something where I go, we have a holistic approach. We can help you solve all these problems. And the buyer goes, yeah, that sounds pretty good. The next day, another rep comes in and they say, you don't really want to do holistic. You kind of want to do best of breed. We'll solve these 2 problems. That'll take care of the rest. You won't even notice that you have any issues downstream with these other things. Now the buyer's like, okay. And then the third person comes in and they go, we can do all of that for 20% less. Now the buyer's paralyzed because they're so afraid of making the wrong decision. So they have all been in that pitching mode of telling how they can help versus this is what I try to tell reps all the time. They know so many things that would be so beneficial to a buyer because they don't know what they don't know. But because we have these conversations all the time, it really comes down to the fact that I can give you questions. I can help you see around corners. I know what's changing in the environment. I know mistakes other organizations have made. And you're here. What I'm saying is you never hear me say me, we, our, or us. I don't say those words because the minute I say those words, the buyer's like, oh, I already know what's going on, right? But if I say to them, I know something and I'm going to give you something and I don't have any expectation, we have just opened up Pandora's box to a conversation.
Yeah, it's really coming from that standpoint of trying to be a servant first.
Yes,
exactly. And deliver value before you even ask for that first meeting. So we hear it a lot, email is dead, especially when you think about, tools like social selling, video DMs, and now artificial intelligence. I think that email is perhaps getting, dismissed, by a lot of us, or maybe not as used as effectively as we could. And, maybe some people see it as outdated. Why do you think that belief has taken hold? And how do you really feel about email from a selling perspective?
Well, I think everybody wants the easy button. Everybody's looking for, and what I say to people all the time is, it's not a one and done. This is really a process that will help you get a really healthy pipeline. Now, I'm not a social seller. I don't believe in just email. I believe that it's a tool, and that's why I focus on it. And I think the reason it gets dismissed is because people follow the wrong things. They follow opens. And what I say, and that's, if you have a Mac or you have an iPhone, that is an automatic open. So you're looking at information that's not real. I tell people there's one metric and only one metric they need. And that one metric is, did you get a meeting? Because if you've created enough curiosity, if you've created FOMO, you then have the ability to get the meeting because they lean in and they go, okay, I want to learn. And I've just told them I don't have any expectations. So in reality, I'm going to make a deposit. I have no idea what's going to come from that. Maybe it's a deal. Maybe it was just a mindset shift within their thinking, right? Maybe it's down the road. Maybe they're under contract. I just don't know. I don't know the various multipliers at play. But the reason they dismiss it is because when I look at subject lines, it's the first thing I do every morning when I get in. It's like, ooh, the games begin, right? How many can I delete? Everybody does that, right? But if you use a subject line that causes someone to go, wait, what? They will open your email. Now, the key is then in an email, you have to start making that relationship deposit. Don't pitch. If you pitch, you're going to have a problem. They're going to delete you unless they just happen to be, you caught them at the right time. They're looking for a tool. They're willing to give you a shot. But it's, I even hear about teams who, like SDRs or BDRs who maybe are outside the four walls that are hired to set meetings. And, the sheer volume of calls and emails they have to do is unreal. And when I look at what they're doing, it's because they're pitching. And that pitching just hurts people. And listen, I don't blame salespeople. They haven't been taught any differently, right? And so they're the pride of here's what we can do, and yes, we can help you. And maybe you can, but here's the problem. Buyers have been burned a lot. And so, man, you got to be really buckled in for them to say yes to you.
Yeah, and I love what you said about open rates too. I know that I am guilty, of looking at my email open rates for my newsletter that I send out 2 times a week. And, open rates are fine and dandy, but they really don't mean anything if your emails are not converting, right? If they're not converting into meetings and they're not converting into, next steps calls, sales, those kinds of things. So why does email continue to work when it's done right and done well? Because from what I'm hearing you today, you still strongly believe that it's one of the best ways that sales teams can get in front of people.
I do. And I'll tell you why. There's this new strategy that has been around for maybe 12 to 18 months where people will either not set up their voicemail or they'll intentionally leave it full. And there's no front office anymore. There's not like in a lot of cases, they use a voicemail. And I always feel like that's karma. We have sales teams who go, okay, we want you to go sell, but then their whole organization is so locked down, it's hard to penetrate inside. And so for me, email is the one thing. So people check their email on the train, on their way to work, at lunch, at their kids' games, right? And they check it on their cell phone. So you still have the ability to be in front, but you can be in front. And if you're sending crummy emails that have horrible subject lines, like, we can get you new leads, 500 by the end of the year, right? Like, I already know you're going to sell me, but like my very best email that I've ever written, the subject line was requesting discount. And that was intentional. I wanted to give them heartburn because inside the email, then I said, I know your sales team is constantly being bombarded for discount. I'd like to share with you 3 strategies that you can share with your team so they're prepared for that conversation. And then I said, I'd like to share these with you, even if there are no next steps. And I just give them a link to my calendar that says, grab 20 minutes with me. And the reason that works so well is people are like, yeah, I'm just exhausted of giving discounts, right? So I got to have the conversation. So some of it turned into deals. Some of it, they just wanted the content. And I was okay with that because I knew I had taken up space in their head.
Yeah, so it sounds like you created curiosity by kind of tipping into a pain point that your potential client had. Is that fair to say?
That's really fair. And that's what I would say that I hope your viewers, listeners take away from this, that as a sales rep, sales team, organization, you know more than your buyers 99.9% of the time, right? So rather than trying to convince someone, what if you were to teach them? What if you were to say, you know what, there are 3 changes in the environment that we really think are going to impact your business. We don't think you'll have all 3 of them, but I'd like to share them with you so that you're prepared, even if there are no next steps with us, right? Like I am giving them what I know. It's sort of like this. I had to buy a furnace not long ago. I won't go through the whole story, but there was a guy who took time with me and really told me about my mechanical room, told me about my unit that I had outside that was not big enough for our house. And he just said, like, he goes, if you hire me, I'm going to fix all of that. And you're going to save about $150 a month. He taught me so much about things I had no idea about. And I would have made a bad decision. So I had 4 other quotes. And I looked at them and I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. They were going to put in exactly the same unit I had, which was going to be a problem.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see here. You teach that email can be used to spark curiosity, right? Instead of pitching. We've talked about that. Can you give us an example of what a good email actually sounds like? Maybe using your 3-sentence structure that I talked about, in your intro at the top of the hour, and explain why it stands out in a crowded inbox.
Yeah, because the way that it works is that you are going to tease them with something you know. I want to cause heartburn. I want them to lean in. I want them to go, oh yeah, I absolutely want to know this. And then when I say, hey, I'm going to give this to you, and I'm going to tell them even if there are no next steps, right? So the whole idea is that the risk is very lowered. I've told them it's only 20 minutes, and I encourage salespeople all the time. You got to use a calendar link. I know it's super controversial. People are like, yeah, but IT firewalls, and they don't want to use that. But then I see that they've got an image in their signature, and I'm like, you're already getting pixelated by IT already. So they're already flagging you for not being that. Like, we need to clean up a lot of things. This should not look like a commercial. This should look like, hey, I was thinking about your business. There are mistakes that organizations are making. I'd like to share with you the top 3 that we're consistently seeing so that you and your team can make the appropriate adjustments. So even if there are no next steps, I'm going to go ahead and give this to you. Grab 20 minutes with me. And it's just very simple. I mean, my emails in general are generally under 70 words, right? They're really short because, again, everyone's looking at email on this. And so the whole deal is that it's a very small screen. And if I've written paragraph after paragraph, and if I've bullet pointed, and here's how we can help, we're like, I'm deleting you so fast.
All right, Beth. So what's one mindset shift, that leaders and salespeople can make about email and modern selling? If you had to give one mindset shift that would move the needle the most, the quickest, what would that be for our listeners today?
Yeah, the mindset shift. I think a lot of times subject lines are afterthoughts, and they're honestly the key to the lock. Let's think about that for a second. If they don't open your email, then the subject line is irrelevant. And so subject line in my world is mission critical. I always say it's, about 2 words. I love words like change, concerns, challenges, anything that will kind of cause an emotion. I just had a LinkedIn post on this where I gave out a whole bunch of words that people could use. But and don't pre-sell. I always say that subject lines, the only thing they're missing is like a disco ball. Like, they're so busy trying to convince someone to open the email. And I'm like, no, just pique curiosity, cause them a little heartburn, give them FOMO. If you can do that, if they can have the mindset shift of that right there, they will get a lot more traction. Now, you can't pitch once you get into the email. You literally have to teach, but it's such an easy thing to do. It's just, to your point, we have done things a certain way for 30 plus years, right? And this is why teams are struggling, because they're not creating any differentiation. Even if their tool is way better, even if they could provide incredible results, buyers are super resistant right now. I say this, the devil they know is better than the devil they don't know. Buyers would rather be unhappy and have containment around their unhappiness than actually make a change that could really move the needle. So this is what buyers are up against. But if you can change your selling from pitching to making a relationship deposit to having an organic, authentic conversation, it's life-changing.
Well, Beth, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left in our episode today, and I want to switch gears just for a moment and get away from the selling space and talk more about, the work that you've done inside of, corporate spaces. And I'm thinking about that new, maybe mid-level manager that is brand new to an organization, and they're trying to find out, how do I best put my best foot forward from an email perspective in communicating with my boss, my downline, my peers if I'm new to the organization? What's some email etiquette suggestions that you have for somebody that finds themselves in that spot right now?
Yeah, so I think the part of it is if I'm in mid-management, so you can go upstream and downstream, right? So if I hear what I say to managers all the time, I had a guy call me one day and I was like, whoa, I didn't know there were so many swear words in the English language. And he was not mad at me. He was mad at a rep. And he was very frustrated with them. And he's like, why didn't he do this? And why didn't he do that? And after he got done venting, I said, well, did you show him? Did you tell him? Well, no, he should know. And I was like, whoa. Clearly he doesn't know, but I think you do. And I think that would be invaluable. So rather than harping on people, which I don't think works most of the time, but if you can coach and mentor, if he could go, if you're on downstream, you could say to that person, like, how about, what could we talk about that would create curiosity with them? So a lot of times I tell people, like, tell me about your features and benefits you're just dying to talk about. And then I will just flip those around for them. And I'll say, like, okay, we can't say it that way, but we can say it this way. And then etiquette moving up, I think the biggest thing that people can do is, first of all, having a string of emails is a horrible idea, right? Sometimes you just got to have a conversation. But if you are going to change the topic, then start a new string, right? The whole idea, I hate when I get an email and it's, 17 emails deep and the subject has changed 17 times or 12 times, right? I'm like, I have no idea what we're talking about anymore. Upstream, you absolutely need to be very clear about what that email is about. Don't wishy-washy, call it out straight up.
Yeah, that's a great point. When I was in the higher education space and for-profit sector at a local college here in Tulsa, there were so many times, small school, right? I mean, literally all administration is literally, on the third floor. And we would have these email conversations back and forth where literally, Sally Sue was 10 seconds down the hallway, to have a conversation, but people would often get into this, tit for tat email back and forth all day long. Like, we have got to be more efficient with our time.
Right. 100%. So sometimes if it's really long like that, or there's a lot of people, just set a meeting, knock it out. It just, rather than the email, the craziness of email. And that's why people don't like email. Your inboxes are so overflowing and you lose track and someone hasn't responded and you don't know if you're supposed to be jumping in. And so there's a whole bunch of things.
Well, Beth, thank you so much for joining us on Lead Empowered TV today. Appreciate you sharing your insight. And that wraps up today's conversation with Beth. I have shared a QR code multiple times in today's episode, so make sure you connect with her at her website. It's bethmaster.com, and you can also scan the QR code that I've shared in the episode. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Take care.